Hey, it's Soul with a video that will do a scene-by-scene breakdown of Bastion, the first episode of the pre-Shadowlands launch Afterlives series. Really quick impressions. This is long. It's like 7 minutes long, and it tugs at the emotional heartstrings that concern Uther, the Lightbringer, one of the most celebrated heroes of Warcraft, and how a lot of betrayal and a little bit of emotion led him down a path that he may not have deserved. If you want to watch this cinematic uninterrupted, a link to the video is in the description below. Otherwise, here we go. We start with Uther's worst day ever, beaten to exhaustion, throwing down his signature hammer. I really dig the updated look from the original Warcraft days and how he has a much more celebrated look to him, but a lot of good it does him here. So far, this scene plays out without words, and words aren't needed. Uther is kneeling, alone, with the land that he's defending behind him, and his aggressors are in front of him, including his beloved student Arthas, ready to deliver the final blow that would do nothing to end his misery. The scene ends with the off-screen death blow, and the only spoken words by Uther.
Light, save my soul.
Knowing what Uther knew, he probably thought he was going to be raised as another ghoul, and maybe at some point his body was. Fortunately, his soul was mostly saved, and the Arbiter decided that Bastion was his destination. But we later have to wonder if the Arbiter made the right decision. We'll have more on that later. Uther is taken here by Devos, one of Bastion's paragons, which are like the top people of the realm. I mean, if you look at them throughout the video, they're the top people. They're freaking huge. Anyway, she explains that Uther's here because now he has a new job, to train his spirit to be just like her, a busy bee that ferries the souls of the dead to the Shadowlands. But I'm sure, like any first-time visitor to the afterlife, Uther still has strong connections to the mortal realm. After all, he was murdered in the face. His people were massacred by his own student. And it's kind of a betrayal to his beliefs too. After all, he was devoted to the holy light, and this isn't quite the same thing at all. It kind of underlines the idea that the Kyrians aren't so great at therapy for troubled minds. Like, their idea of a fix is to purge memories without dealing with emotional scars. What's most conflicting here, or at least I've decided it's the most conflicting, is the difference between vengeance and justice. My opinion, but in Uther's case, they're one and the same. Arthas committed great wrongs, but as Uther's student, his betrayal is very personal, and that's something that he can't ignore. This inability to let go concerns Devos to the point of curiosity, maybe obsession, and one of her little footmen points that out. I mean, okay, maybe it's another paragon, but I'll just go with a footman. She wonders, did the Arbiter make the right decision? Doubt is definitely not becoming of a paragon of Bastion, and not what the Archon would like to hear. Trust the path, the helmet person says, to which Devos is like, yeah, sure, okay. Time passes, which equates to the events of the Frozen Throne, maybe Vanilla, maybe the Burning Crusade perhaps, going by. And Uther is still struggling to graduate from aspirant school. His yearning for justice/vengeance is just too heavy of a burden to meet whatever requirements that are meant to ascend. Here's where I'm supposed to suspend disbelief, but I'm going to nitpick a little bit. Uther asks, how can he forget the memory of his death when he can still feel Arthas' blade? At first, this sounds like a metaphor until Devos takes a little peek under his shirt and sees that, oh, okay, yeah, he's being quite literal. Now, how come no one noticed this? Especially Uther, like you would think that he would be the first one to notice. But perhaps since we're looking at Uther's spirit, maybe we're seeing a wound that might have been totally invisible at first. Invisible to him, and Devos, and the Archon, maybe the Arbiter too. Devos points out that his soul is wounded, right in the place Arthas stabbed him with Frostmourne, a weapon forged by the power of the Shadowlands, specifically the Maw. So finally, Devos peers into his memory, like after all this time. Nice. And here we have it, this agonizing, fatal blow by a stone-cold, unfeeling Arthas. But what you see here is what looks like his soul being split, maybe into two uneven halves. One yellowish part seems to slip away. The bluish part is sucked into Frostmourne. So when Uther is brought to the Shadowlands, he doesn't just have a wounded soul, it appears that he's not even whole. So after peering into his memory, Devos is like, okay, that's gotta hurt. She takes this up with the Arbiter while surrounded by what are probably her fellow Paragons. She makes her case that Arthas, the Lich King, is dicking around with super crazy death magic, and he's gotta be taken care of. But she's met with resistance and a few interesting lines. The Maw is inescapable, they say, and yet Dreadlords manage to get in and make Frostmourne and the Helm of Domination, and then leave. And then Devos is told to return to what they call the Path: conformity, obedience, servitude. At least, that's what it's implied. But Devos pushes on, saying that if Uther had followed the path and didn't hold on to his mortality, that no one would have warned us about this danger, and that the path led them to this, and thus the path is flawed. But with just a word, she's shut down by the biggest Kyrian of them all. The Archon reminds Devos that they have a purpose that has to be served, almost as if, despite the apparent danger, this road is preordained. All the Kyrians have to do is their job, and not question it. That didn't sit too well. No, not too well at all. Devos is like, screw it. If even the Archon doesn't want to take care of this threat, she'll do it herself. Uther's a tainted soul, but apparently he's still good in her book, like good enough that she'll ascend him and use him to carry out some less than savory work. All it takes is the offer to have Arthas punished for his misdeeds, and Uther's in. He classes up from Broken Paladin to Ascendant, good for him. But now their plan is to wait for the moment Arthas loses his life, and it's up to them, not anyone else, to claim his soul. Here's the chilling part that really tugged at me. It's not far off from how the scene of Illidan's death isn't quite what it seems. This is a familiar scene with the broken Frostmourne, the fallen king, and his last words, "I see only darkness," which now has a whole new meaning, as the last thing he sees is a Kyrian, consumed with doubt and fear, take his soul. Before that, though, I have to think back. Part of Uther's soul was left in the Runeblade, but then the Runeblade was destroyed thanks to Tyrion, so what happened to it? It seems clear that Kyrians take souls to the Shadowlands, but what about a broken part of it? Maybe it's roaming around somewhere, and one day we players will recover it. Maybe it was used as food for Frostmourne. Maybe the connection to Frostmourne and the Maw means part of Uther is in the Maw too now. My impression of Uther at this point is that he really is broken, literally broken. What if things turned out differently and his whole soul was taken to Bastion? Maybe Uther would have come to terms better, and the Kyrians wouldn't have found out about Arthas at all. Arthas would have died, he would have went where he needed to go, and that might have been the end of the story. But that's just not how it went down. Uther's soul, driven by vengeful justice, carries Arthas to the Maw with Devos close behind. "Cast him into the Maw," Devos shouts, egging him on like, "Do it, don't be a wuss, man, do it, you know?" Devos' eyes are pushing him, and in this shot, you can see Uther with a grim determination. But as he looks at Arthas, who's dead and beaten, we transition to the most tragic shot of this video. Far more tragic than Uther's own death. It's this look of torment, doubt, regret, failure. "He was my student," he says. But then Devos keeps pushing, reminding him of what Arthas did to everyone. And it's enough to push Uther over the edge. But it's not vengeance, he tells not just to Devos, but to himself. It's justice. And there we have it. We have Arthas thrown into the Maw without being properly judged, meaning that at this point, we don't know where Arthas was supposed to go upon his death. Maybe Arthas was always on his way to the Maw, but Devos and Uther never gave him that chance. But Arthas didn't start out as a mustache-twirling, dog-kicking baby killer. He wanted to save his people, his country. He wanted to protect Azeroth, but the Runeblade, the helmet, and the influence of the Legion turned those motivations into something far darker. Uther, meanwhile, remains broken, and we don't know if Uther's too far along this path that even recovering the rest of his soul will matter. But overall, this was a really cool cinematic. Bastion reconnects us to World of Warcraft's past, revisits heroes and villains, and creates a new story. There are a lot of questions to ask, and I'm just gonna point out like a few of them, alright? Like, is there anything left of Uther's soul on Azeroth? Now, it could explain how he sometimes speaks to players, especially in Legion. It's a part of the Paladin Order quest line. That means we could return to this place to recover his soul, or maybe escort Uther the Kyrian here to recover what's missing. Uther wasn't the only person Arthas killed in his heyday, meaning there's possibly a great number of souls in the Shadowlands 4 realms who have traces of the Maw carved into them. But what could this mean? Will this be visited at all? And what sort of backdoor was used to smuggle weapons from the Maw and into Azeroth? There's a pretty deep conspiracy at play here, and I'm pretty excited to see it play out. That's going to complete my coverage of Bastion, the first episode in the Afterlives series. You're more than free to share your thoughts on this cinematic in a comment below. I urge you to please like this video if you enjoyed yourself and to subscribe for more of this and all things Warcraft. We'll see you for the next episode. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.